A warm welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Here are the stories making our headlines this hour. Long queues characterize the Queen's Line in State in London. Thousands waiting to catch one last glimpse of the closest they can get to the Queen's coffin. Russian missiles hit Reservoir Dam near the city where President Volodymyr Zelensky was born. Plus, woman arrested in South Korea over the New Zealand children found dead in suitcases denies she had anything to do with it. It's been 24 hours since the Queen's coffin has been lying in state at Westminster Hall in London for people to pay their last respects to the Queen up until 6:30 a.m. on Monday, September 19th. That's the day of the funeral. Thousands of mourners have been waiting in very long queues since yesterday.
Thousands of mourners queued all through the night to see the Queen lying in state at Parliament on Wednesday. Her coffin was brought to Westminster Hall from Buckingham Palace, and just after 5 p.m, the public began to file past the coffin, some in tears, many bowing their heads.
I was here for the lying in state for the Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, about 20 years ago. I must admit I can't remember if I said anything, but I do know I bowed, and it will be similar this time. We'll have to move past in an orderly fashion quite quickly so the maximum number of people can pass and pay our respects in our individual manners. I haven't decided yet what I'll say.
I think it's important for me. I've had the Queen in my life. She's been immortal, I think, and it's hard to believe she's gone.
God save the King.
God save the King.
God save the King.
God save the King. So, yeah, I just felt that we needed to be here. I needed to pay my respects to her. She's done an incredible amount of service for this country and beyond. So it felt like the right thing to do.
I don't know, the Queen has always been someone who I always admired. And I just finished to work and I decided last minute, you know what, let me go and say a last goodbye. So that's why I came.
Wednesday marked the moment the coffin passed from the family to the state. King Charles, his sons Princes William and Harry, and other senior royals joined a solemn procession taking the Queen's coffin as the late monarch made her final journey from Buckingham Palace on Wednesday. Huge crowds gathered in central London to witness as the coffin, lying on a gun carriage covered by the royal standard flag and with the imperial state crown placed on a cushion on top, alongside a wreath of flowers. The coffin bearing the Queen's body, taken in a slow, somber procession from her London home to Westminster Hall, where it will lie in state until Monday. Walking directly behind were King Charles and his siblings, Anne, Andrew, and Edward. Following slightly behind were Princes William and Harry. Mourners continued to queue for several miles along the south bank of the River Thames Thursday morning to see the Queen's coffin lying in state in London. All through Wednesday night, the line stretched back several miles along the river, past landmarks such as Tower Bridge and a replica of Shakespeare's Global Theatre. Crossing Lambeth Bridge as it neared Westminster Hall, people waited for many hours.
Just remembering everything that she did for us. She gave so much. She would stand and she, in her duties, she would give so much. And I just think maybe give a little bit back and say thank you.
As an individual, she was a very lovely lady, and our deepest respect for the lady and the Queen of our Queen, and we mourn of her death, but we also celebrate the legacy she left behind. That is why we wanted to pay our respect to the Queen lying in state in the Westminster Hall.
As the day wore on, the Princess Royal took some time to view the flowers and tributes to the Queen. The new Prince and Princess of Wales also greeted members of the public and viewed floral tributes outside Sandringham. Sandringham has been the private home of 4 generations of British monarchs since 1862. Other senior members of the royal family have also been greeting members of the public, appreciating the turnout, love and support for the royal family at this time.
Channel Television's crew was in Green Park in central London, which has become somewhat of a memorial garden for people who want to lay flowers in memory of the Queen. Some of the mourners spoke to our correspondent, Juliana Olainka.
Why was it important for you to be here today?
The Queen, for me, was the lighthouse built on a rock that steered us all through troubled waters. Whenever we've had constitutional issues, state issues, she's always been an absolute constant. She's never, ever wavered. And you could always rely on her to be there. And yeah, you're right. You have to be here to feel the emotion, the atmosphere. It's astonishing. I think personally, she would have been utterly overwhelmed at the sheer scale and number of the flowers and the messages. If you take time to read some of those messages, they're genuine. They may never have met the Queen, but that was the impact that she had on each and every one of them. Absolutely astonishing.
There was 2 reasons I come today. One was to pay my own respects, and the other was the students I was with today. I just wanted them to experience something they won't probably understand fully until they've grown up. And that was what we were just chatting about just as we were walking out. But maybe the first reason for me was just a sense of growing up. For me, as I said to my partner last week, it was there was 2 people I set my standards by, and that was my mother, who unfortunately passed away in July, and the Queen. I think there's a lot of people who can relate to that fact. I didn't know the woman personally, but I realised that in everything that we try to do and in what we define as Britishness and worldliness, I think that she captivated that, and she's been part of a change, an ongoing change, and a big part of that, and something that we wanted to pay our own respects here and to see, I suppose, take it all in. Sometimes the TV doesn't really paint the picture of what a feeling can feel like, and coming here today is very, very reflective.
It's incredibly sad, although she's such an old lady. Whatever your feelings about monarchy, she's so well respected and just such an amazing person. Come up to lay some flowers and it's really moving.
Yeah, I suppose that's all I've known. I can remember 1952 or 3, the coronation, and I was 4 or 5 at the time. I can remember a street party, and it's just, I even get emotional now. It's just a lady. Amazing. I'm sorry. It's
just an amazing lady, and I think sort of it brings it home as well when you see tributes from around the world that are saying, yes, we knew her as our Queen, but to the rest of the world she was just the Queen. There was nobody really like her. I don't think there ever will be again.
A cross-section of people who have come to pay their tributes to the Queen. Our correspondent Juliana Olainka sent this in, also from London.
Well, today marks precisely 7 days since we heard the news of the Queen's passing. And I think it's really the first time that the British public, as well as the royal family, have been able to pause and take a breath, because all of the pomp and ceremony and the pageantry and the huge events that we've witnessed over the past few days have come to an end today. We know that King Charles III and other senior royals are finally being able to rest, because it has been an extraordinary period. We are here in Green Park, which is just a stone's throw away from Buckingham Palace. Some would even call it Buckingham Palace's front garden, where, as you can see behind me, tens of thousands of people are coming to pay their final respects to the Queen. It is a very kind of emotional, somber period, and now the world awaits for the late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, which will be taking place on Monday the 19th of September. What we have seen, though, over the past 24 hours are an outpouring of love, and that is in the way of people queuing to see the Queen lying in state. This is taking place in Westminster Hall. Again, this is just a stone's throw away from this facility. Where I am is the centre of gravity in London. This is where everybody is doing their utmost to pay their last respects. Now, the queues to see the Queen are enormous. If you find yourself at the end of the queue, according to some reports, it could take up to 30 hours to see the Queen's coffin, which has been adorned with the imperial crown. But having listened to some individuals who were fortunate enough to get into Westminster Hall, they said it was absolutely worth it. They have been mourning her life, looking back at the magnitude she had on this country. But you've got to be here to experience it, and I'm glad that we have been able to come down and take in this absolutely unprecedented situation here in the capital. And all eyes are going to be on the capital, particularly over the next couple of days. We know that security services are working in a way that they've never worked before. We've heard from the Mayor of London and from MI6, MI5 chiefs that this is an operation much bigger than the London 2012 Olympics. Come Friday, we are expecting heads of states from all across the world, including, of course, the US President Joe Biden and the First Lady, to descend upon the UK, on London in particular, to attend the Queen's funeral, and making sure that that is safe and the British public is safe and the Queen's coffin is safe is no mean feat. It is going to cost an extraordinary amount of money at a time where Britain is, of course, going through a significant cost of living crisis. And while it's important to note that there are mixed emotions about the Queen and the legacy of the royal family, I think you only have to look at the numbers and look at the thousands of mourners who are coming here and who are lining up across the bank of the River Thames to get a final glimpse of the Queen, to show just how much, the world's longest reigning monarch was loved. Juliana Olayinka, reporting for Channels TV News in London.
Thank you, Juliana. Well, here in Lagos, millions around the world actually have been expressing their condolences over the death of the Queen. A commendation service was held in Lagos at the residence of the British Deputy High Commissioner, as per the Queen's wishes, for those not able to attend the funeral in London. In the calm of the evening, guests begin to arrive at the residence of the British Deputy High Commissioner in Ikoyi, Lagos. Many of them dressed in black, in solidarity with the United Kingdom as it mourns the demise of the Queen. Among them, traditional rulers, statesmen, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the Nigerian-Britain Association, and the Governor of Lagos.
God of love, we thank you for the life of the Queen, for her service to our nation, and for our faith in you. be close to all of us who mourn, that we may find comfort and hope in your love, through Jesus Christ, our Lord.
It's a short service, but one that certainly captures the character and personality of the Queen, who always considered the needs of others while performing her royal duties.
Many of you will be aware that she was never intended to be Queen. Her father became king when his brother abdicated. So unlike her son, His Majesty King Charles III, this was not a role that she spent 73 years preparing for. Even so, she showed for that 70 years the professionalism and dedication that she became renowned for. She became to be known as the very model of public service. The United Kingdom was and remains a constitutional monarchy. And as we are British, we even choose to make life just a little more interesting, and so not write that constitution down. What it meant, though, was Her Majesty's role was to stand above politics and to be there to ensure stability of government.
We entrust your servant, Elizabeth, into your keeping. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord, who, though he died, is now alive, and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forevermore.
And with the first verse of the new UK national anthem, the service is over. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu reflects on the qualities that made the Queen stand out from other world leaders.
Watching from afar, you could see a woman of grace, a woman who indeed, has transformed life, has built bridges in the entire Commonwealth community. We're told she's been to over 112 countries, right? She's made the Commonwealth and the United Kingdom government stronger and bigger than what it is now. Having hand over government to over 15 prime ministers. Well, I think all of our credentials will be difficult for previous and future kings and queens to be.
While monarchs do not mourn, the Erelu Kuti of Lagos, Abiola Dosumu, speaks about her admiration for the Queen.
I just find the whole thing incredible, amazing. But what's much more poignant for me is the ovation, the eulogies, and everything. You have one thing going through everything. Kind. And I'm hoping that this platform by which we are all grieving because of this woman will be a turning point in bringing peace, humanity, justice to this world.
And more reflections from the president of the Nigerian Britain Association, Bimbo Razak Okoya.
I had the pleasure of meeting the Queen at Buckingham Palace when she celebrated her Platinum Jubilee parade. And it was just such a marvelous moment. And now I know that that time has been crystallized in time because it's just one of those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities.
The funeral for Queen Elizabeth II takes place on Monday, September 19, 2022. It will be witnessed by many world leaders, but watched by millions of people around the world. We'll have more on the Queen and the Lion in State in the UK. Plus, Russian President Vladimir Putin in Uzbekistan attending the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Condolence registers are being signed at British embassies all over the world. The Malaysian Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob signed one at the official residence of the British High Commissioner in Kuala Lumpur today. He bowed in front of a portrait of the Queen after signing the book and spoke briefly with the High Commissioner Charles Hay before leaving. In the meantime, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has left Sydney to attend the funeral of the Queen on Monday next week. Local media reported official and government officials from Tuvalu, Samoa, the Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea accompanied Mr. Albanese on the Royal Australia Air Force flight, along with the Governor-General of Australia, Sir David Hurley. Albanese will join other world leaders for the funeral on Monday. Remember, the Queen Kulthum Mohammed Said was just 12 years old when a young Queen Elizabeth II visited Aden, then one of the world's busiest fueling ports and a strategic piece of Britain's crumbling global empire. Nearly 7 decades later, Yemen's long years of war and neglect have taken a devastating toll on Aden, and the death of the Queen has made Kulthum nostalgic. Speaking in her home next to a hospital founded by the Queen, Kulthum said young and old in Aden turned out to welcome her during a 24-hour visit in 1954. It was part of a round-the-world tour that the Queen made in the first year of her coronation. News footage of the visit showed the Queen awarding knighthoods to a senior British Air Force officer and a Yemeni leader from the eastern Hadramaut region, watching a march past of Yemeni troops, some riding camels. A bronze plaque still marks the foundation stone Elizabeth laid for a hospital, which bore her name until the end of British rule in 1967, when it changed to Al Jumriya Republic Hospital. In that intervening decade, the goodwill on display during the Queen's visit dissolved. A 4-year uprising, during which hundreds of people were killed, drove out British troops. Britain had captured Aden in 1839, seizing it to control the entrance of the Red Sea and protect routes to India. In 1937, it became a crown colony with great strategic importance to the British. Aden then became a capital of the socialist South Yemen, which merged with the North in 1990 before unsuccessfully trying to break away in a civil war 4 years later. The city has seen heavy fighting again in the latest conflicts, which broke out when fighters from the Iran-aligned Houthi movement seized much of the country in 2014. Well, one last stop over for the Queen, a career diplomat and former Nigerian representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Joseph Ayalogo joins me now. He's in London. Ambassador, thank you for spending time with us this evening. And you have seen at least 3 British monarchs. It's remarkable. In your lifetime, are the happenings of today looking familiar to you?
Thank you, March. Well, it's a lot more robust. Perhaps my first sight, I was born under the reign of George the sixth. That's the father of the late Queen. And then when I was 6 years or so, King George died, and in 1952, February, Queen Elizabeth became queen. She was crowned finally the next year. So I would say, like you said, I've seen 3 now. Well, the much I can say from comparison is that of Queen Elizabeth was about the first one or so televised. So came on to us, both television, both by radio, and we can feel. I was, of course, in Nigeria, but it was everybody everywhere resonated with the reign of the Queen, a new queen. Nigeria has always, well, at least since we became, since the amalgamation, we had seen Edward the Seventh, George the Fifth. George the Fifth was quite popular in Nigeria. I think one of the stadiums was named George the Fifth Stadium. Well, this is bound to be, the current one is bound to be probably a lot more exciting, in that the Queen has a lot of records, had broken a lot of records. One is as the longest reigning monarch in British history, whether male or female, and took us through 2 centuries. Well, two different centuries, the 20th and the 21st century. So, and of course, a lot more has been happening by way of communication. So, communication, information technology. So it's quite a lot there won't be a lot of difference. I can only speak of her death because I wouldn't say that I was fully able to pick up all about King George, her father's burial and so on. So,
Yeah.
to your question, there's a huge
We're
difference. There
looking.
has to be.
Yeah, and there's a new king. So you've seen one king, and you're seeing another. Um, uh, well, a huge gap of difference between the two because the Queen ruled for so long. Do you think that the UK would ever move on from Queen Elizabeth II? I mean, even though King Charles III's reign has just started, it will take a really long time, to speak of the Queen in the past, wouldn't it?
Well, definitely it will be difficult, but it would eventually happen. It has happened before. The point is that many people who are in the age of 70, 80, 70 at least, they've only known one queen. So every time it's queen. People are making mistakes about still making mistakes, and even though we have a king now, they still talk of queen and so on. So the queen evokes quite a lot of nostalgia in about 3/4 of the population, British population. It will take some time, but they would eventually go on. This is not Britain has a long history of kings, absolute kings, constitutional kings, and up to the constitutional monarchs, and up to the current dispensation. Well, incidentally, they have had most of their queens have had maybe more significant impact. As a historian, I still remember that the reign of Queen Elizabeth I was a nostalgic one. It was also long, 1558 to 1603. Then the Queen Victoria, the next queen, well, not the next queen, because there were a few others, Queen Anne, Queen Mary. But then you now have also the golden age of the Victorian era. And from there now, you now, of course, the third epochal queen would be this one, will be Queen Elizabeth II. So it's all part of British history that stretches thousands of years, 1,000 years at least, since 1066, the Battle of Hastings, when you had the Norman kings come into Britain.
It will take some getting used to. Referring to the head of the monarchy now as King, King Charles III, taking over and leading Britain into this modern 21st century era. Thank you so much, Ambassador Yoloko, for taking us back memory lane and down history as well.
Thank you, Amarachi.
Checking on the war in Ukraine now, emergency service workers have been extinguishing fires and documenting the scene of Russian airstrikes in Bakhmut in the Donetsk region. One official says the overnight shelling hit a multi-story building and the crime had been documented. Meanwhile, local residents have been using boats to get around the flooded streets of Kryvyi, a latest city to be hit by the airstrikes from Russia. A city with an estimated pre-war population of 650,000 was hit by 8 cruise missiles on Wednesday, which damaged its water system, sending floodwater to parts of the city. Alexander Vilko, the head of the Kryvyi military administration, said in a post on Telegram, 112 homes were flooded, but the works to repair the dam on the Inulets River were underway and the flooding was receding. In a video address earlier today, President Volodymyr Zelensky said strikes had hit the Karachunov Reservoir Dam. A water system had no military value, and hundreds of thousands of civilians depend on it daily. The VOA's Anna Chernikova joins us from Kyiv. Anna, great to see you. And this is the first time we're hearing about Kryvyi Rih, which is, from our understanding, where President Volodymyr Zelensky was born. How significant is it that these strikes have hit this particular city?
Good evening. Yes, this is the home city of President Zelensky, and this is a very well known and quite a big city in Ukraine, as it is industrial city. So there are a lot of industrial facilities in there and industrial infrastructure, and a huge dam, which is the water dam, which is of course has a huge influence on the not on only on the city but also on the region. So the city is a part of the Dnipropetrovsk region, and of course, for the moment, it is very much under missile strikes, sometimes more, sometimes less. But for the past days, it's basically the main city of the main and of the biggest missile strikes.
And we know that these attacks are Russia's response, that is, to the counteroffensive going on in Kharkiv, because Russian forces are they're going back, and Ukrainian forces are forging ahead. But we also know that people were also asked to evacuate Kryvyi Rih. Is Ukraine also anticipating more strikes on new regions?
Well, you're absolutely correct, and this is how it is, perceived here in Ukraine. That this is kind of a response from the Russian side to the counteroffensive actions. At first, it was the attack on the city of Kharkiv, and now the city of Kryvyi Rih. Well, actually, quite huge destruction of the dam was reported, and around 112, even more, private houses were flooded due to this missile strike. And as you correctly said, people are actually evacuated because overnight Ukrainian rescue groups were actually working hard and making sure that the water level is not going too high and higher. So it was possible to actually stabilize the water level, but still out of those 112, and maybe a little bit more, so the report for the moment is at 112, out of those 76 houses remain under the water or partly under the water. So these people are obviously evacuated because it is not possible to stay in that areas for the moment. Over the past 24 hours, the city of Kryvyi Rih was actually attacked 3 times. Twice, the first time it was a big hit of the dam, and the hit was by the Kinjal and Iskander missile. So it's very precise missiles, and especially Kinjal, if we're talking about Kinjal, and very expensive missiles. So Ukrainian officials consider this as a very precise missile strike. Second one was targeting the infrastructure, the civilian and industrial, in particular the infrastructure. And the third one that happened just a couple of hours ago, even less, it was again targeting the dam. So Ukraine definitely expects Ukrainian officials again and Ukrainian people understand that actually, there is a big possibility of another strikes. And unfortunately, this is something that, Ukrainian civilians have to pay for because of the Ukrainian army's success. But as the mayor of Kryvyi Rih and a lot of locals have said, that this definitely not going to stop Ukrainian army from the advances. So Ukrainian society is very supportive for the army and for their success.
Wow, this is a lot to take in, 3 strikes in one night. Anna, do stay safe in Kyiv.
Thank you.
Russia's foreign ministry says if the United States decides to supply Kyiv with longer-range missiles for the US-made HIMARS systems in use by Ukraine, it would cross a red line to become a party to the conflict. That's coming from Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova. who says Russia reserves the right to defend its territory. She adds that Russia has repeatedly stated that pumping Ukraine with Western weapons leads to a prolongation of hostilities and new casualties among the civilian population. Also stating further that if Washington decides to supply those long-range missiles, it would cross a red line, become a party to the conflict, and Russia reserves the right to defend its territory by all means available to it. Well, President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Uzbekistan today, where he's also been talking about the situation in Ukraine. He said current attempts, however, to push for a unipolar world have taken an absolutely ugly form lately, which the overwhelming majority of nations of the planet find unacceptable. The remark came as he met with Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Samarkand. President Putin said Russia and China stand together for a just, democratic, multipolar world order based on international law and the central role of the UN, and not on some rules that somebody invented and attempts to impose on others without even explaining what they are. According to him, the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden has been using the phrase rules-based world order to describe the way it prefers the world to operate. During the meeting, President Putin thanked Xi for China's balanced stance on the crisis in Ukraine. China has criticized Russia for having attacked the country, but it's blamed the U.S. for triggering the escalation by its push to expand NATO. Putin also reiterated Russia's support for the One China policy and Beijing's claim of sovereignty over the island of Taiwan. The Chinese government has accused the U.S. of undermining its territorial integrity by increasingly treating Taipei as a separate nation rather than a self-governing part of China. EU says it will be extending sanctions against Russian nationals until the spring of next year, adding that the late Russian politician Vladimir Zhirinovsky, who died this April, will no longer be on that list. That decision was announced by the European Council in the official Journal of the European Union on Wednesday, stated that the restrictions against Russian individuals accused of undermining or threatening the territorial integrity, sovereignty and independence of Ukraine would last until March 15, 2023. Now, aside from Zhirinovsky, who was the founder and leader of the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia, the EU also removed Olga Aziman, the former wife of Russian business tycoon Mikhail Friedman, as well as Saudat Nazarieva, the sister of billionaire and former Arsenal Football Club shareholder Alisher Osmanov. But European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is in Kyiv today, where she's said she's impressed with the speed at which the country is proceeding in its bid to become a member of the European Union. Ms. von der Leyen, who arrived in Kyiv yesterday to meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky, says the EU needs to do as much as possible to ensure Ukraine has more business and more income.
We have discussed a lot of topics. First of all, I must say the accession process is well on track. It's impressive to see the speed, the determination, the preciseness with which you are progressing. And as you know, we support you wherever we can. I do not have to say to speed up the process because you are speeding it up. That is very good. In parallel, we have agreed that we need to work as much as possible to make sure that Ukraine has more business, more income, and thus the seamless access to the European single market is possible for Ukraine. You might recall that at the beginning of this atrocious war, there was still the plan that in 2024, the Ukrainian electricity grid should be connected to the European one. Well, we made it in 2 weeks. This was amazing. And since then, even better, Ukraine is delivering electricity to the European Union. This we want to improve and increase, and thus create steadfast flows of income, for example, for Ukraine.
And we talked about China earlier on, criticizing the United States, but it's also slammed the U.S. for approving a bill related to the Taiwan region as a violation of U.S. commitment to the One China principle. That's according to a spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Mourning made the statement when asked to comment on the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee's move to pass the Taiwan Policy Act of 2022, which now heads to the Senate floor. She said the relevant bill severely violates the U.S. commitments to China on the Taiwan issue and violates the One China principle and the 3 China-U.S. joint communiques. It interferes in China's internal affairs, violates international law and basic norms in international relations, and sends a seriously wrong signal to the Taiwan independent separatist forces. China is firmly opposed to this move and has made serious representations with the U.S. side. Ms. Mao reiterated the political foundation of the China-U.S. relations and warned of the severe consequence of the breach. Still ahead on the world today. Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio experiences his moment from the movie Dirty Dancing. Stay with us. Welcome back. Police in northern India have arrested 6 people in connection with the alleged rape and murder of 2 girls from a lower caste community who were found hanging from a tree. The bodies of the 2 girls, aged 15 and 17, were found at a field in Lakhimpur Kheri district of India's most populous state of Uttar Pradesh today. According to the police, from preliminary inquiries, it appears the girls were strangled with a scarf and hung from a tree after they were raped. Uttar Pradesh Deputy Chief Minister Brajesh Patak says the government would act to ensure justice for the victims' families. Violence against women, especially those from lower castes, is endemic in India, where several still follow an ancient caste system. A woman believed to be the mother of 2 children whose remains were found in suitcases in New Zealand last month has denied allegations related to the case. South Korean police arrested the woman, a Korean-born New Zealander, in the southeastern city of Ulsan earlier in the day after global police agency Interpol issued a red notice. The woman is in her 40s. She's suspected of fleeing to South Korea in 2018 after killing her then 7-year-old and 10-year-old children in Auckland. A South Korean court will review whether to extradite the suspect to New Zealand. The police launched a homicide inquiry in Auckland after the remains of the children were found by a family going through the contents of a storage locker that they had purchased unseen. Migrants in limbo at the border area between Mexico and the United States, seeking the American dream and undeterred by reports the U.S. is looking to keep them in Mexico. Border crossings have surged to record highs in the United States, despite President Joe Biden's administration quietly pressing Mexico to accept more migrants from Cuba, Nicaragua and Venezuela under COVID-19 expulsion order that the White House has publicly sought to end. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken raised concerns about an escalating number of crossings by migrants from the 3 countries during a visit on Monday to Mexico City. 2 U.S. and 2 Mexican officials have reported this, but Mexico has not promised any specific actions yet. Migrants at the Mexico-U.S. border say that their journey has been difficult, faced with insecurity in Mexico and changing laws on their status in the U.S. Mexico already accepts U.S. returns of migrants from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. So far this fiscal year, about 299,000 people from those nations have been expelled at the border, compared to about 9,000 returns from Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Here in Africa, João Lourenço has been sworn in for a 2nd term as president of Angola amid tight security, 3 weeks after he won a disputed election and was challenged by the nation's main opposition parties. The inauguration was held on the historic palm tree-lined Praça da República Square in the center of the capital, Luanda. Several heads of state and government, including Portuguese President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, was in attendance. 68-year-old President Lourenço returned to power after the August 24 vote gave him a thin majority, winning just 51.17% of the votes. Now, a farm in Egypt's Delta employs the use of advanced techniques, including fully automated, data-driven and monitored greenhouses for climate change adaptation, as a country braces for hosting the upcoming COP27 summit. Tolima Farms has over 20,000 square kilometers of data-driven polycarbonate environmental control greenhouses with a mission to build an environmentally conscious agriculture community in Egypt.
Owners of a farm in Egypt's Delta Governorate of Beira are using fully automated, data-driven and monitored greenhouses to track the health and progress of crops by the minute as the country faces the negative impacts of the global climate change crisis. The farm, named Tolima, meaning let's farm in a Bantu language, stretches over a 25,000 square meters plot of land that was once cultivated in traditional ways before owners transformed it into one using hydroponic and vertical farming techniques. The family business aims to increase yields while saving water and energy on the smallest possible plot of land. At the farm's greenhouses, alternative soil made of cocoa peat and recycled plastic containers are used to grow crops using hydroponic farming with controlled temperature, humidity levels as well as recycled water. According to the owners, the technology helps optimize space and increase yield compared to traditional farming techniques.
Here we are different from traditional agriculture as we use alternative soil for agriculture. We use a product called cocoa peat, which is grounded coconut pith, to grow our crops in an environment free from diseases, rot, bacteria, or any other harmful elements from the soil. We also put the plantations in bags made of recycled plastic bottles while using a closed-circle water irrigation system that helps me keep 90% of my water. In this greenhouse, I use only 10% of what could have been used in an outdoor land in order to produce 10 times more yield than the one produced by the same plot of land outside in traditional agriculture.
The farm also includes a number of vertical farming containers with controlled environment which allow crops to grow vertically, further supporting space optimization while consuming 20 liters of water weekly.
This container is a complete farm, from the seed to the harvest. Here, we plant using modern techniques, vertical farming, which enables me to grow more plants. In addition, it's very environment friendly. It consumes around 20 liters of water weekly, and it's operated by solar panels installed on top of the container. So I can move the container anywhere in the world because it employs controlled agricultural methods. It can operate in the desert, in the cold, and in the snow.
Tolima's owners said the technologies employed at the farm and the pesticide-free policy save cost, helping them target more clients for their products.
People expect that the price of our products is expensive because they are pesticide-free products and planted using advanced technology. But actually, the opposite is true. Technology saves costs, and because we don't use pesticides, this is already a big cost I am saving. The technology I use allows me to produce 10 to 15 times more with the same plot and same number of workers. Therefore, the cost is less.
Tolima's technological culture penetrates the Egyptian farming sector by providing hyper-local, highly nutritious and water-responsible produce to customers.
The United Nations says just 42% of refugee children are enrolled globally in pre-primary education, 68% in primary and 37% in secondary. According to a new report by the UN Refugee Agency, there's been an increase to 6% in tertiary, but the numbers are and remain relatively low. In the report, All-Inclusive, the Campaign for Refugee Education, data compiled from more than 40 countries, highlights a disturbing disparity in the quality of education provided to refugees compared to that provided for non-refugees.
Just 42% of refugee children are enrolled globally in pre-primary, 68% in primary, which then goes down significantly to 37% in secondary. There has been an increase to 6% in tertiary, but the numbers are and remain relatively low. And with the increase in refugee and displaced populations, it is increasingly urgent that those gaps are addressed. We continue to call urgently for all refugee youth and children to have access to quality education right through the life cycle. And the focus here continues to be the inclusion in national education systems. So in the systems of the governments and the countries where they then reside once they become refugees. That does need relevant education financing mechanisms. There's been a huge amount of support put in from host governments, but actually meeting that support with financing is increasingly critical.
And this was the moment the Italy's Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio was lifted into the air, dirty dancing style, by waiters while The Time of My Life was playing at the Trattoria do Nanella in Naples, recreating the iconic movie scene during his campaign trail. Di Maio embraced the moment, spreading his arms out into the air, just like Jennifer Grey's character did in Patrick Swayze's Arms in the 1987 classic, as the waiters spun him around to cheers and applause by restaurant visitors. He was in Naples campaigning for the upcoming September 25th general election. Earlier this year, Di Maio quit the left-leaning Five Star Movement to form his own government. Let's hope that translates to votes when the elections come. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Dubani.